Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. John Hood, in a cram-packed show, I'm sure there were things you would like to have added, but you didn't get a chance to. Tell us what it might be.
Well, there was some discussion about Governor Cooper potentially having a statewide order to require mask wearing in public. I didn't get a chance to comment on that, but here's what I would have said. I would have said that I don't think that the governor should take that action. For a couple of reasons. First of all, this is something that local governments are already addressing. I think that the local governments should be given the room to maneuver in this area. In some parts of the state, this will be passed and it will be accepted as a reasonable move. In other places, it probably won't. And I think just as we should have allowed more variation locally in the early days of the pandemic, I think that we should allow that here. The other reason is I just don't think the governor should do this because everybody knows it's not going to be enforced. They're stipulating that it's not going to be enforced, and it's really an educational move. And while that is problematic at any level of government, if a city enacts an ordinance and says, now we're not going to enforce this, but we really want you to do it, that's one thing. I don't like the idea of putting laws on the state books or executive orders, in this case on the books, that we know are not going to be enforced. I think it weakens respect for the law. And in particular, Governor Cooper is just not a good messenger for this. Yeah. Okay, we all know, and even though it wasn't a very long period of time, but he did walk through or walk past a crowd of protesters with his arm raised, with his mask hanging from one ear. And it's just a bad, what we need to do is have people setting examples, talking about the value of face coverings, particularly in enclosed spaces, particularly in spaces you're going to be in for more than a few minutes, because otherwise you really are talking about minimizing a very low risk a little bit more, and that's not going to sell. But in indoor spaces where people are confined for significant periods of time, that's the place where you need to be thinking about masks. And I think the enforcement of that is likely to be business by business, institution by institution, rather than the governor issuing an executive order.
Yeah, for instance, if you go into a Costco store in North Carolina, you can't enter the store without a face covering. That's their rule.
And you know, when people own property and make it open for business, whether it's a restaurant or a store or whatever, they get to make rules like that. And I have been a little puzzled, some of my conservative friends, I have a right not to wear a mask. Well, yes, you do if you're on your property. If you're on somebody else's property and they say wear a mask or don't come in, you have no constitutional right to refuse.
You play by their rules.
That is the way free societies actually work. People get to make rules when they're talking about their own property, their own businesses, and this is one of them.
Well, I think your argument about no mandatory enforcement is very valid. And for instance, in the city of Raleigh, when they instituted this face covering, there is no enforcement provision. Well, what's the incentive for somebody to follow something they don't want to follow to start off with?
Well, it's a social cue is really what it is. Yeah. What they're saying is we're going to make this up. What you're doing by enacting a ban is you're actually strengthening a recommendation.
Yeah.
I understand that. I just don't think the state should do it as a statewide measure.
Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.